Hello, my dear students. I am Dr. Chandan Sharma, Associate Professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering, and I'll be teaching you this course that is Design of Machine Elements 1. In today's class, we'll discuss the basics of design of machines and the course outcomes, that is, what you will be able to learn by doing this course. So let us start. If we talk about the scheme, this is a 3 credit course as per the syllabus of Bikaner Technical University. Out of this, 30 marks are reserved for internal assessment, in which 24 marks are for the 2 midterm tests and 6 marks are for assignments and quizzes and attendance. End term evaluation will be of 120 marks and end term exam shall be of 3 hours duration. This is the syllabus of this DME1. So as you can see, we'll be starting the first unit, that is objective, scope and outcome of the course. Then remaining topics will take in the subsequent classes. Again, the remaining syllabus, we are going to study the components as well as their design concepts. The books that we'll be referring are Design of Machine Elements by V. Bhandari, then another book by Sharma Agrawal, one more book is Behel Goel, which is also a very good book, and this is book by U.C. Zindal. So we'll be referring different books for different topics, and we'll solve numericals also in the sessional class. As we all know that when we do a course, there ought to be some certain course outcomes. So if we talk about this course, that is Design of Machine Elements first, after doing this course, you'll be able to understand fundamentals of design and modes of failures of different mechanical components. Then you'll be able to analyze design equations for various mechanical components and principles that govern their design. You'll also be able to understand various design considerations and apply them. And finally, you'll be able to apply the concepts to solve design problems of components such as levers, cotter and knuckle joint, shafts, keys, couplings, curve beams, screw fasteners, and laminated springs. So I hope that you will enjoy this course. There are a few components that we'll design in this course. This is a spring-loaded valve. So we'll be designing this lever in this. Then it is a knuckle joint. This is a cotter joint. This is a photograph of leaf spring, also called as laminated spring. Few more components. We'll be designing screw fasteners. So this is screw fastener. This is basically an eccentric loading bolted joint or screw fastener. So this is also in our curriculum. We'll be taking this also. These are shafts. This is muff coupling, and this is another rigid coupling. So we'll be taking this course, and we intend to learn the design concepts of different components and how we can solve numerical problems that enable us to strengthen our understanding of this course. So let's start. If we want to define what is machine design, so we can say that it is a process by which machines are created that works safely, economically, and reliably. It is a popular saying that one machine can do a work of 50 ordinary men, but no machine can do work of designer. So the role of designer is very important because he is the one who has applied certain principles and come up with a machine that is going to be used to perform certain specific functions. The definition of machine design can be, it is defined as use of scientific principles, technical information, and imagination in the description of machine to perform specific functions with maximum efficiency and economy. These three aspects are very important for machine design, that is use of scientific principles, use of technical information, and imagination, which is also very important. So a designer has to have all these informations, all these knowledge of all these aspects, then only he'll be able to design the component. In other words, machine design is a creation of a plan for a machine to perform desired function. Now, the design can be of three types. It can be entirely new design, the machine that was not existing earlier. Then it can be development design, that is, machine was existing earlier, but the new design performs new type of work. Or it can be adaptive design, that is, the machine was there, but the new machine will work more economically as compared to the existing machine. This is the flow chart of basic procedure of machine design, how the requirement is being raised and what is the end product. This is the layout. First of all, whatever component is to be required, is to be designed, its market survey is undertaken. What is the need of that component? Then after the market survey, specifications of the product are defined. Say, for example, we need to design a bearing. So what purpose that bearing will be used, we need to define that. Then for the machine or machine element which is to be designed, we need to understand what will be the mechanism of working and what are the available options. Amongst the available options, we'll choose the most appropriate option for its mechanism. After that, a general layout of the configuration is prepared, and the joining method or assembly procedure is being defined. Then come the actual work, that is designing individual components. You can see that we have put a red boundary across it. So this is the portion which is in our curriculum. We will not be discussing market survey or how to define a mechanism for the product. What we'll be doing is this portion, designing individual components. And when the outcome of this exercise will be the assembly and detailed drawing of the component. Then it goes to the shop floor where it is actually manufactured. If we go further, the requirements of machine elements, before that let us try to understand what is the difference between machine element and its component. For example, there is a machine, say lathe machine. It will have different elements. Say lathe machine is having a bearing, or if we want to make it more simple, let us take your ceiling fan as an example. Ceiling fan is a machine. Now in a ceiling fan there can be anti-friction bearing or ball bearing, that will be machine element. Now in that machine element there will be several components Like in a ball bearing, there will be ball, there will be inner race, there will be outer race, there will be cage. So we can say a machine is composed of machine element, and machine element is made up of several components. So basically we will be designing these components so that we can assemble them and form the machine element, and different machine elements shall comprise a machine. So basic requirement that a machine element should satisfy are: it should have sufficient strength and rigidity. Strength means it should take up load, and rigidity means it should not deform when the load is being applied. It should have sufficient wear resistance. The best design is that design which has minimum dimensions and minimum weight. So that is also a requirement which a machine element should satisfy. Then the process uh, which designer intend to make it from, it should be possible. Like the designer should not suggest a process which is not feasible, nor economical, nor reliable. So the component should have manufacturability. Then it should be safe and reliable. It should perform the intended function safely and reliably. It should conform to standards. It should not be, the component should not be such that it is not available in the market. So it should conform to certain standards. Its maintenance should be possible, and it should have minimum life cycle cost. So these are the few requirements, basic requirements that a machine element should satisfy. Now, let us talk about the design procedure of machine element. This flowchart defines the uh, process or steps in the design of machine element. First of all, for the given component, we need to specify its function. Say we need to design a shaft for an IC engine. So we need to specify its function. Then comes which forces are coming on the element, whether it is tensile forces, whether it is compressive forces, or it is being applied to bending moments or torsion moment, that are being determined. Then comes the suitable material for the element. There are various engineering materials that can serve the purpose. So we need to choose the best appropriate material for the machine element. Then we will see under the application of the forces how the component will fail. So we need to fix the failure mode of the machine element. Then using design equations, we'll find the dimensions of the element. We'll modify these dimensions as per the requirement of assembly and its manufacturing capability. We'll check the design at the critical cross sections. When it is done, we'll prepare the working drawings, and then these drawings are being given to the people at the shop floor where they'll manufacture the component. So this is the process of designing of machine elements. So everyone should be clear about this. Uh, Now let us come to the qualities or knowledge which a machine designer should possess. As we have seen in the previous slide, the requirement of or basic steps in designing machine element. So accordingly, a designer should have a very good background in strength of material, which forces are coming, what stresses are being developed, should have a comprehensive knowledge of the same. Then he should be well acquainted with properties of material. Then only he'll be able to select the best or appropriate material for the given application. The designer should be well informed about the latest manufacturing techniques he should be well informed about the kinematics, that is study of forces. The design that he or she is proposing should have good aesthetic sense. It should look good, it should appeal. So that is also an important aspect. And above all, he should have a sound knowledge of costing. The design which he is proposing, whether it is economically viable or not, that is also an important aspect which a designer should have. There can be two design methods. One is design by craft evolution and another is design by drawing. Let us see what these are. The design by craft evolution is a age-old method in which the craftsman or the designer prepare the design by hit and trial method. The examples are bullock cart, rowing boat, musical instruments. The common thing about these is no drawings are prepared, nothing is being marked. The designer is only uh, limited to what is he has seen or what is imagination about the instrument or the equipment, and he simply designs that. So features of this is craftsmen cannot offer justification for the design they make. Say bullock cart, he has made a wheel of the bullock cart, so he cannot offer justification why he has taken the die of bullock cart as bullock cart wheel as something. There is no justification in this case. Secondly, these products are developed by trial and error method. Third, there is no symbolic medium to record the design information of the product. जो बना है उसका क्या स्पेक्स है, उसके लिए कोई भी स्पेसिफिक सिंबॉलिक मीडियम नहीं होता है इन डिजाइन बाय क्राफ्ट इवोल्यूशन. Obviously, this process of design is obsolete due to two reasons. First, this method cannot adapt to certain changes in the requirement. Secondly, the product cannot be manufactured on mass scale. This is basically a method which can be used for customized design, and that too for simple designs. Otherwise, for complicated state-of-the-art designs, this method cannot be adopted. Hence, it is obsolete. Second method which is used these days is design by drawing. That is being very common method. Here, the dimensions of the product are specified in advance of its manufacturing. The complete manufacturing of the product can be subdivided into separate pieces that can be made by different people. Say a machine element is comprising of 4 parts. So in this method, all the 4 parts can be individually manufactured and then assembled. Third, when the product is to be developed by trial and error, the process is carried out on a drawing board instead of shop floor. So the cost is also reduced. And the last is much of the intellectual activity is taken away from the shop floor and assigned to the design engineers, because they'll be designing the product, looking into all the aspects, and when they are satisfied, then only the component will go to the shop floor and its manufacturing shall be undertaken. So this is the method which is known as design by drawing. Now, before we proceed further, let us try to understand what is use of standards in design. If you put it simply means that whatever we are designing, we ought to follow certain standards. The standards are for materials, their chemical composition, their mechanical properties, and heat treatment. Standards can be for shapes and dimensions of commonly used machine elements. It can be for the fits tolerances and surface finish of components. We'll be taking this in detail in subsequent lectures. Then standards are available for testing of the products. Then standards are also available for engineering drawing of the components. So what we mean to say by this, it is defined as obligatory norms to which various characteristics such as materials, dimensions, shape, method of testing, packing and storing of product should conform. For example, if we said that this component is as per so and so standard, that means the component that is being designed, it is conforming to the standard. It can be for material, it can be for shape, it can be for testing, it can be for drawing, engineering drawing. So a designer should make best use of the standards. There is one more thing that is known as code. So let us try to understand the difference between standard and code. A code tells us what we need to do, and the standard tells us how to do it. Further, a code may say that a building must have a fire alarm system. The standard will spell out what kind of system and how it must work. The code didn't specify how to build a building, but laid out the consequence of not building well. In other words, code is a model, set of rules that knowledgeable persons have recommended for others to follow. It is not a law, but can be adopted into law. On the other hand, standards tend to be more detailed elaboration. So this is few points that differentiates codes from standards. Further, the objective of standard is to reduce variety and limit the number of items to a reasonable level, whereas purpose of code is to achieve a specific level of safety. So this is few differences between standards and codes. Standards can be of different types. One is company standards, that is used in a particular company or its sister concern. Standards can be national standards that are within the boundary of a country, like IS, Bureau of Indian Standards, or BS, UK standards, or it can be for international level, that is international standards prepared by International Standards Organization, also known as ISO. So these standards are frequently used in the design process. If we talk about the advantages of standardization, we all know that due to the standardization, the design process has become simpler and more convincing, because due to standardization, its manufacturing is possible on mass scale. Thus, cost is also reduced. Further, standard component is manufactured by a specialized factory, so it relieves the machine building plant of the laborious work of manufacturing that part. What does that mean? Say a machine element requires certain equipments like pumps, shafts, bearings. So these are standard components. So they'll procure those components from the specific companies which are into manufacturing or designing those components. So the job is to just bring those components and design the machine. These standard components shall be used directly from the persons, from the companies which are specifically designing those products. Further, due to standardization, it is easy to replace the parts that are worn out, so it promotes interchangeability. The application of standard machine element, and especially the cell unit, such as couplings, pumps, pressure valves, electric motors, reduce the time and effort required to design a new machine. The standards of specifications and testing procedures of machine elements improves their quality of and reliability. We often say that always take switches which are IS mark. So IS is basically standards. That is the switch that you have purchased. If it is IS mark, that means it has undergone some standards. So that is always better because it will ensure quality as well as reliability. In design, the aim is to use as many standard components as possible for a given machine. Now, we cannot design the machine in isolation. The operator that is going to use that machine has to be in the picture. So there is always a closed loop between man and machine. Let us see how. When machine will perform its function, it will give some displays. The displays are being received by the operator who is operating the machine, and depending on that displays, he will take some corrective actions, and machine controls will rectify what is being given by the operator. So there has to be a closed loop, that is display of information, information reception, corrective action proposed by the operator, and then controls that uses this corrective action when the machine is not functioning properly. So when we are designing a machine, we need to consider this aspect also, that is this information should be conveyed to the operator in a proper way, and the operator should be able to convey the corrective action to the machine. So the contact between man and machine in this closed loop system arises at two places. First is display instruments that gives information to the operator, and controls which operator adjusts the machine. Like if we are driving a car and we see that speedometer giving us the signal that we are over speeding. So what will be our job? Seeing the display will reduce the speed, will operate the accelerator, and as a result speed will come down. So if display is not proper, then will not be able to, the driver will not be able to judge whether he is over speeding or not. Further, he should be able to operate that lever, that accelerator. Otherwise, the display information which the machine has given will not be, he'll not be able to rectify the information. So at these two junctures, first is display of information, and that second is control. They ought to be conveyed properly. So the job of the designer is to design the displays and control in such a way that they transfer the information to the operator and the machine. For this, a separate discipline that is called as ergonomics is developed to solve the problems that arises from man-machine relationship. Let us see what ergonomic design is. It is defined as a relationship between man and machine, and the application of anatomical, physiological, and psychological principles to solve the problems arising from man-machine relationship. The chair that we often use for our seating, if it is ergonomically designed, will not feel fatigue. If its height is proper, will not be will be comfortable. So all these principles comes under the umbrella which is called as ergonomics. Its Greek meaning is natural laws of work, and the topics of study, ergonomic study, are these: designing of driver seat, designing of layout of dials and displays, designing hand levers and hand wheels, then what amount of energy is being spent in hand and foot operations by the operator. Then one more aspect, that is lighting, noise and climatic conditions, that also comes under the purview of ergonomic design. Let us see the various considerations in the design of display instruments. The objective is that operator should feel minimum fatigue. So the design principles for designing of displays should have ergonomic considerations, which are as follows. Scale on the indicator should be divided into suitable numerical progression. Number of subdivisions between number division should be minimum. Size of letter or number should be appropriate. Vertical figure should be used for stationary dials, while radially oriented figures should be used for rotating dials. The pointer should have knife edge to avoid error due to parallelism. These were the ergonomic considerations in design of display instruments. Talk about controls. The considerations are as follows. Control should be easily accessible and logically positioned. If it is not so, the operator will not be able to apply the information that is received from the displays. Operation should involve minimum motions and avoid awkward movement. Like in the example of car, everything should be within reach of the driver. Then only he'll be able to apply the corrective measure. The shape of control component should be in conformity with anatomy of human hands. Proper color produces beneficial psychological effects. Control should be painted in red color and gray background for machine tools to call for attention. So these are few considerations, ergonomic considerations, that we use while designing controls. Next comes the design process. There are two design processes. First is sequential design and other is simultaneous or concurrent design. Let us see what is this. The conventional design process is sequential. That means main activities are executed in sequence. This diagram shows that it is marketing department. It passes on the information to the design office. Design office designs the component, prepare drawing and passes on this information to the production department. Here the component is being manufactured and then it goes for sales and service department. So you can see that there are 4 different departments and all are working in sequence. If this department has not given the demand, this design office will not be able to design it. If it is not designing, this department will not be able to produce it, like that. So they all are working in isolation. Basically what happens, designers are creative artists who overlooks the capability of plant's machinery. If this office is not knowing what is the manufacturing capability of this department, he'll not be able to design it properly. Further, the people over here are realistic and they prefer standard materials, simple manufacturing methods and standard components. If there is no licensing between these two, whatever design is being proposed by this office, it may be possible that that is being rejected by this production department, since the process desired by this design office is not available at the shop floor. So often what happens, the production department suggests number of modifications after the design is finalized, resulting in time consuming redesigns and miss the time schedule in number of projects. So क्या होगा इससे, टाइम ज़्यादा लगेगा और प्रोडक्ट की लागत बढ़ जाएगी. So this is conventional process which is known as sequential design process. Now let us see what can be done to improve this. The answer is concurrent engineering, or it is also called as simultaneous engineering. Here you will feel the difference that a design engineering department is taking feedback from number of other departments: sales and service, customer requirement, manufacturability, reliability, ergonomic and appearance, cost. So whatever design the design engineering department is proposing, since they have taken the feedback from all these departments, it is likely that the design is final and there will not be much changes, since whatever suggestions they are about to give, design department has already taken that. So the concept is to bring the design and manufacturing activities together as a single engineering discipline. If we see the features of concurrent engineering, it is defined as the design process that brings both design and manufacturing engineers together during the early phases of design process. In this process, a team of specialists examines the design from different angles. The team should include manufacturing engineer, tool engineer, field personnel, reliability engineer and safety engineer. The specialists consider various aspects such as feasibility, manufacturability, assembly, testability, performance, reliability, maintainability, safety and cost in the early stages. As a result, a smaller number of modifications in the design at later stages are expected that reduces the time interval from conceptual stage to marketing stage. It reduces the cost also. There is a small case study of a firm that has adopted the principles of concurrent engineering. Catholic Instruments, a company making measuring instruments, applied this concept in developing a digital multimeter. The results are very encouraging. Number of parts reduced from 131 to 76. Number of assembly screws reduced from 30 to 8. Assembly time was reduced to 35%. And only one screwdriver was required instead of multiple assembly tools. So this was a result of applying concurrent engineering in place of sequential engineering. One more aspect is there, that is preferred sizes, selection of preferred sizes. What is the need of this? If a company desires to make certain product within a given range, what mid values it should take? For that, this preferred sizes concept is very important, since it promotes standardization. फर्ज करिए दो कंपनीज हैं जो कि मोटर्स बनाती हैं, इलेक्ट्रिक मोटर्स बनाती हैं. सो व्हाट रेटिंग दे शुड चूज, और इंटरनेशनली अगर वो कंपनी इंडिया में है तो उसकी रेटिंग जो है it should comply with what a company in say US who is into the manufacturing of electric motors. So there ought to be some sync between these two. This sync is being achieved with the use of preferred sizes. What information preferred size provides? Say a company who is engaging in designing electric motors ranging from 0.5 to 50 kilowatt. So this preferred size concept will tell what in between values it should design for. So preferred numbers are used to specify the sizes of product in these cases. The system is based on use of geometric progression to develop a set of numbers. There are 5 basic series: R5, R10, R20, 40 and 80, which is given by this. There is one factor which is being achieved by this method. R5 means 10 to the power 1 by 5, which is 1.58. So if these are the initial and final values, so 0.5 multiplied by 1.58, rounding off to next higher integer, will be the next motor, and then that multiplied by 1.58 will be the next power rating. This process is continued till complete series is built. Resultant numbers are rounded. You can see when in the initial stages the jump is of 58%. Later on it has reduced to 3%. So it is observed that small sizes differ from each other by small amounts, while large sizes by large amount. So in the initial stages, the product is manufactured in limited quantity, and for that R5 series is chosen. When the demand is established and the production is increased, the company may switch from R5 to R10, introducing new sizes of the intermediate values of R10 series. Let us try to understand this one example. These are the different capacities are to be determined for electric motor between 5 to 15 kilowatt. If a firm intends to start the production, they can initially choose the R5 series. So 5 multiplied by the factor for R5 series, that is 1.58, round off to next number is 8. So next series will be, next power rating will be 8 kilowatt. Then 8 kilowatt multiplied by 1.58, 10 kilowatt, 10 into 1.58, 15 kilowatt, nearest integer. So R5 series there will be 4 power ratings. When the company has increased its production, they can switch on to R10 series. So in that the factor will be 1.26. So 5 multiplied by 1.26, rounding off, after rounding off it is 6 kilowatt, and so on. So initially when there were only 4 ratings power rating possible, now it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 power ratings possible. So as you move on from lower series to higher series, the models in between, the power rating in between, or the size in between will increase. Advantages of preferred numbers is they help in minimizing unnecessary variations in sizes. They assist the designer in avoiding selection of sizes in an arbitrary manner, because he or she ought to follow a certain series. So there will be a similarity between what sizes two different designers have adopted. There will not be arbitrary size in between. The complete range is covered by a minimum number of sizes, which is advantageous to the producer and customer, and they aim to produce standardization, which is a prime requirement of machine design. So in this lecture we have attempted to understand the basics of machine design, the outcomes, its definition, requirement of a designer, standards, codes, man-machine system, economic aspects, and many more. In our next class, we'll try to attempt the new topic, new chapter. I would suggest you go through any of the book of your choice and try to understand the basic principles, so that when we'll solve the questions, or when we'll move on further, you'll be able to relate what we are doing and why we are doing. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation. We'll be coming back with the next presentation. Till then, thank you so much for your patient hearing.